Hello, friends. You're watching The Night Watchman, where every day you'll hear a brand new horror story that will send chills down your spine. But to keep bringing you these terrifying tales, we need your love and support. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now let's begin the story. I never thought a simple can of Pepsi could ruin a life, let alone take so many of them. But that's where this story begins, inside a quiet suburb in Burlington, Colorado, in a town small enough that everybody knew which soda you preferred. My name is Ethan Price, and for 29 years, I lived the kind of life no one would ever make a Netflix series about, until last winter. Back then, I worked the graveyard shift at a regional Pepsi distribution warehouse on the outskirts of Burlington. I was a forklift operator, the kind of guy people barely remembered even after working with me for years. I clocked in at 10 p.m., clocked out at 6 a.m., and spent most nights stacking pallets of Pepsi cans into the cold, echoing space of the warehouse floor. I lived alone in a one-bedroom rental with flickering bulbs and thin walls. My girlfriend, Lauren, had left me 3 months earlier, saying I worked too much and cared too little. My nights were quiet, repetitive, predictable, until the night we loaded shipment 47B. The night everything changed. It was a Friday, snowstorm outside. The wind howled like something alive. Inside the warehouse, it was colder than usual. The giant metal doors kept rattling like they were being pushed from the outside. My supervisor, Daniel Huxley, a tall man with a permanent scowl, stood next to a new pallet set apart from the others. The cans on it were a slightly different blue. Not the regular Pepsi blue, darker, almost faded, and the logo wasn't placed right. It looked tilted, off-center. "What's wrong with this batch?" I asked. Daniel shrugged. "Corporate scented, special limited test batch. Don't touch it unless instructed." The way he said it was odd, like he was repeating something he didn't believe. Later that night, when the others went on break, I passed by the pallet again. One can looked dented. It was the only imperfect one. The dent shimmered in the cold light, like something pulsing underneath. And then I heard it. A faint hiss, not the sound of carbonation. Something closer to breathing. I stepped closer, and then, clear as day, something scraped inside the can. My heart stuttered. The can moved, just a fraction, but it moved. I backed away fast, telling myself I was overtired. But when I turned, Daniel was standing behind me, closer than anyone should stand. "Don't touch that pallet," he whispered. His eyes looked sunken, terrified. Before I could speak, the warehouse lights flickered, then went out. The scraping inside the can grew louder in the dark. When the emergency lights kicked in, Daniel was gone. Just gone. I thought he had stepped into the rows of pallets, maybe gone to check the breaker. But minutes passed. No footsteps, no voice, nothing. My radio crackled, a whisper, barely audible. "Ethan, get out!" I froze. The voice was Daniel's. I grabbed the radio. "Daniel, where are you?" Static. Then another whisper, but far weaker. "Not alone." That's when a loud crash echoed from the far end of the warehouse. I jumped, dropping the radio. Something metallic rolled across the floor. A Pepsi can. But not blue. It was silver. Unlabeled. Sweating like it had just come out of a freezer, I bent down to pick it up, and something hit the huge metal door from the outside. Hard. The whole warehouse boomed. Something slammed it again. And again. I ran to the office and dialed 911. The operator could barely hear me. "Something is trying to break in. My supervisor is missing. Please send someone." Before I finished, the line cut. Not disconnected. Cut like someone pulled the cord. I stood there shaking, staring at the limited batch pallet. One of the cans was now lying on the floor, rolling slowly toward me. I grabbed my jacket and ran outside into the icy wind. The snowstorm made everything white. I reached my truck, got inside, and locked the doors. My breath fogged the glass. Then I saw it, in the rearview mirror, a figure standing in the snow behind the truck, still as a statue, tall, shoulders too broad, face hidden, just staring. I wiped the condensation off the mirror. Gone. I drove home as fast as I could. That night I dreamt of metal scraping, of something inside a Pepsi can pushing against thin aluminum walls. I didn't sleep again. I called in sick. Daniel didn't show up for work either, and no one knew where he was. The warehouse cameras malfunctioned that night, every frame erased. The police chalked it up to the storm. But I knew better. My phone vibrated that evening. Unknown number. A text. You opened the wrong pallet. I threw the phone onto the couch. 5 minutes later, another text. Check your porch. My blood ran cold. I walked slowly to the front door. My porch light flickered as I opened it. A Pepsi can sat there, dark blue, dented. I kicked it off the porch and slammed the door shut. Then came the knock. Soft, slow, 4 taps, and a voice. A whisper through the cracks of the doorframe. Drink it. That was the moment I called the police. Deputy Elena Hart showed up, a young officer with calm eyes and a steady voice. She probably thought I was drunk or delusional, but she humored me. I showed her the can lying in the snow near the yard. She picked it up, examining it. This isn't a standard test batch, she muttered. This code isn't used in Colorado distribution. She took photos, logged it, and promised to run the code through the system. That night, she called me back. Ethan, is your supervisor's name Daniel Huxley? Yes. Why, she hesitated. His employee number is linked to a flagged internal case. Pepsi terminated him 2 weeks ago for tampering with products. That's impossible, I said. He was literally working with me yesterday. More silence. Ethan, Daniel Huxley died in 2018. I felt the air leave my lungs. I worked with him yesterday, I whispered. She exhaled shakily. Stay inside, lock your doors, I'll be back. But she never came back, and her patrol car was found the next morning, engine running, empty. Inside the front seat, her dashboard camera recorded something a Pepsi can rolling onto her windshield and stopping, as if placed there gently. Her last words on the recording, "Whoever you are must stay back," followed by a scraping sound so loud it distorted the audio. Then darkness. Panic took over the town. People started seeing the same dark blue cans in random places. Front porches, on car roofs, inside mailboxes, on office desks. The news called it a viral marketing prank, but people went missing. First Daniel, then Deputy Hart. Then a teenager named Logan Pierce, who had posted a TikTok video opening one of the dark blue cans. The video cut off after he said he heard something moving inside. Logan's house was found with the front door busted inward. No sign of him, but the walls inside his room were covered in circular dents, like something had been thrown again and again. Circular, like a can. Within a week, Burlington was crawling with unmarked SUVs, men in suits, helicopters circling at night. The Pepsi plant was shut down pending investigation. I tried to leave town, packed my truck, but when I turned onto the highway, my GPS glitched. Every route looped me back into Burlington. Every exit, every attempt. The third time I tried, a semi-truck blocked the road, its trailer completely filled with those same dark blue cans. The driver didn't look human. His head twitched in tiny, unnatural jerks. His eyes were solid black, as if something had hollowed him out and filled him with darkness. He opened his mouth slowly. A faint metallic scrape came out. I reversed so fast I nearly flipped the truck. I spent the next 2 nights barricaded inside my house. No lights, no sound, just waiting. The cans kept appearing, on my windowsill, on the couch, on my bed, even though every door and window was locked. The worst moment came at 3:12 a.m. A can started shaking on my kitchen counter. Not rolling, shaking, violently. I backed away, heart pounding. The dent on the can bulged outward. Then, crack. A small slit tore open. Something thin and pale pushed out. Not liquid. A finger. A human finger. Then another. 5 in total. A hand crawled out of the can like a spider. Then an arm. Then a face, squeezed, distorted, as if forced through an opening too small. Eyes bulging. Mouth gasping. A man's voice croaked. "Help! Kill it!" I screamed and smashed the can creature with a metal bat until it stopped moving. It didn't bleed. It leaked black fizzing liquid. The body dissolved within seconds, leaving only a wet stain on the floor that smelled like rotten syrup. I gagged and stumbled back. That's when I realized these weren't test cans. They were containers, prisons, and whatever was inside wasn't human anymore. I decided to burn the pallet. If I could destroy the limited batch, maybe I could stop this. At 4 a.m., I drove back to the warehouse with gasoline, a lighter, and more desperation than sanity. The snow had stopped. The sky was an empty black sheet. Inside the warehouse, the pallet was still there, untouched. 100 cans lined neatly, all dented, all breathing. I drenched them in gasoline. The cans hissed louder, as if aware of what I was doing. One can rolled toward me, another followed. Dozens started rolling, forming a circle around me. I flicked the lighter with trembling hands. Something whispered behind me. Drink. I turned. Daniel stood there, or what used to be Daniel. His jaw was unhinged, skin stretched too thin, eyes black and hollow. He raised a Pepsi can to his mouth, and something inside it pulled him toward it, sucking him in like a vacuum. His body folded unnaturally, snapping in half, bones cracking as he was swallowed by the can. He disappeared inside it. The can sealed itself. I screamed and dropped the lighter. The fire ignited instantly. The whole pallet went up in flames, screaming, hissing, metal bursting. The warehouse shook as cans popped like grenades. Black smoke filled the air. And then, a deep roar echoed from inside the burning pallet. Something massive moved underneath, something that had been trapped across the entire batch. I ran out as the warehouse exploded behind me. The blast threw me into the snow. By sunrise, the warehouse was nothing but charred steel and twisted metal. The government declared it a chemical explosion. Burlington was evacuated. No one was allowed within 20 miles. I was taken to a federal facility, questioned for days, then quietly released. They told me to forget everything. But how can I? Especially after what I saw on the news last night. A new Pepsi commercial aired during prime time. Bright, happy, cheerful. But for 1 second, barely visible, a dark blue can flashed on the screen behind the actors. Dented, tilting slightly, as if trying to move. I froze, because the slogan under it said, "New batch coming soon." They didn't stop it. They're releasing it, everywhere. And tonight, when I came home, there was a dark blue Pepsi can waiting on my kitchen table. Fresh, cold, dented, breathing. I can hear it scraping inside as I write this. Something whispering from within. You escaped once. Not again. If anyone finds this story, if anyone finds me, don't drink it. Don't open it. And if you see a dark blue can, run. Story 2, I never liked working night shifts. But at 23, with rent swallowing half my paycheck, I didn't have much of a choice. The Sunoco gas station off Route 17 in Ashford, North Carolina, wasn't exactly dangerous. But it had this unsettling quiet after midnight, like the entire town held its breath until sunrise. I had been working there for 6 months, long enough to memorize the hum of the coolers, the flicker of the old fluorescent lights, and the clicking noise the bathroom door made when it didn't close right. But nothing prepared me for what happened the night the Pepsi shipment went wrong. It started around 2:47 a.m. The store was empty except for the usual truckers and late-night college kids grabbing energy drinks before long drives. I was restocking chips on aisle 3 when I heard the rumble of a delivery truck outside. That didn't make sense. Pepsi didn't deliver at night. Never. I walked to the window. A huge older model Pepsi truck, faded logo, dented doors, was idling near the back dock. A man climbed out. He was tall, too thin, wearing a dusty Pepsi uniform that looked at least 10 years outdated. He didn't look at me, didn't wave, didn't ask for a signature. He just started unloading crates of Pepsi bottles, stacking them neatly on the concrete like a machine. My radio crackled. It made me jump. "Hey, you good?" It was Tyson, the guy from the station next door. "Thought I heard a truck." "Yeah," I said, staring at the man outside. "Pepsi delivery." "At this hour?" Tyson scoffed. "Impossible. They don't send drivers after 11. I opened my mouth to answer, but the truck engine suddenly shut off on its own, even though no one had touched it. The man finally looked up. His eyes were gray, not light gray, ash gray, dusty, empty. I stepped back without meaning to. He gestured for me to come outside. His movements were stiff, like he hadn't used his joints in years. "Got a new product for your shelves," he said. His voice sounded like wind scraping against metal. "Corporate wants a test run." "What product?" I asked. He pointed to a single crate separate from the others. It was solid black, unlabeled, sealed with a thick industrial clip. "This one." He slid it toward me. The crate thudded against my shoe, ice cold, like it had been sitting in a freezer for hours. "What is it?" I asked again. He tilted his head. "Pepsi, the new batch." No smile, no blink, nothing. I bent down and touched the crate again, and a strange feeling crawled up my arm, like static, but heavier, almost alive. When I looked up, the man was already climbing back into the truck. "Wait," I called out. "You need a signature." But the truck had already roared to life, wheels screeching, speeding off into the darkness with no headlights, and without picking up the other crates he had unloaded. They just sat there, silent, like tombstones. The black crate bothered me more than I wanted to admit. I carried it inside, set it behind the counter, and unlatched the metal clip. Cold air spilled out, hitting my face. Inside were Pepsi bottles, but the labels were wrong. The classic red, white, blue logo was faded, stretched almost like a smile pulled too wide. The colors looked sick, off. The blue was too dark, almost ink black. Also, the bottles weren't sealed. They had no cap. Instead, a thin layer of something thick and dark shimmered just below the rim, as if the liquid inside was breathing. I slammed the crate shut. A sharp bang made me jump. One of the bottles inside had toppled over, by itself. I nudged the crate farther away. Something inside sloshed, but not like soda, more like syrup mixed with gravel. My hands shook. I needed a break, needed a moment to think, so I walked to the bathroom to splash water on my face. When I returned, the crate was open, and one bottle was missing. A man I'd never seen before stood at the counter, sweaty, pale, breathing too hard. He was holding the missing bottle. "Was this new?" he asked. His voice trembled. I saw it sitting on the shelf." "I hadn't put it on any shelf." He slid $1 toward me. "Just ring it up, yeah? Thirsty as hell." Before I could warn him, he twisted the bottle and drank. I swear on everything, I saw the liquid inside move upward before he even tilted the bottle. He choked violently. "Sir!" I rushed forward. He dropped the bottle. It shattered, spilling thick black fluid across the tiles. The man clawed at his throat, eyes bulging, veins turning dark as if ink was pumping through them. He collapsed. I grabbed my phone, shaking uncontrollably, ready to dial 911. But the man jerked upright. His eyes were no longer human. They were the same ash gray as the delivery driver's. He stared at me, smiled too widely, then walked straight out the door without a word. Left the body behind. Except there was no body anymore. Just footprints of black fluid drying into the floor like tar. I locked the doors, turned off the lights, called Tyson again, 3 times. No answer. Then I saw it. Through the window, headlights. The same Pepsi truck rolled slowly back into the lot, engine rumbling deeper than before, like an animal growling. The ash-eyed delivery man stepped out, but this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood the customer from minutes earlier, and behind that customer, more silhouettes, dozens, all with the same empty gray eyes, each one holding a bottle from the crate. The man approached the glass door and placed his hand on it. "Return the crate," he said, voice echoing like several people speaking at once. "It must be consumed." "No," I whispered. He pressed harder. The glass bent inward, not cracked, bent, like it was made of plastic. "Return it." I grabbed the crate and ran into the storage room, slamming the metal door shut behind me. A deep groan came from the front of the store, the sound of the entrance breaking. Footsteps filled the store, slow, unified, rhythmic. They were searching for me. I crouched behind the shelves, clutching the crate like it was a bomb. Something inside the bottles throbbed, like a heartbeat syncing with theirs. A voice drifted through the aisles. "You opened it." Another voice layered onto it. You released us." Another one. "It must be fed." I held my breath as their gray eyes swept through the back room. One of them sniffed the air like he could smell fear. Then, a bottle inside the crate cracked. The sound echoed like a gunshot. All their heads snapped toward me. "There!" I ran, barreled through the emergency exit, alarms blaring. The cold night air hit me, but behind me, their footsteps thundered. I jumped into my car. Keys fumbled, engine coughed, started. I sped down Route 17 as the figures swarmed the parking lot behind me, their bodies moving in the stiff, puppet-like jolts. The crate on my passenger seat vibrated wildly, bottles clinking, liquid churning like something alive. I should have thrown it out the window, but some instinct told me not to. Not yet. I drove until my hands stopped shaking, pulled over on a dirt road, opened the crate again. The labels weren't labels at all. They were photos. Old, faded photos printed directly onto the plastic. The first bottle showed a Pepsi bottling factory. The second, workers wearing hazmat suits. The third, dozens of black bags lined up behind the factory. And the fourth, a group of men in Pepsi uniforms being dragged by security into a locked underground room. Victims? Test subjects? Something worse? Then I noticed something else. One photo, partly scratched, showed the exact gas station where I worked. Same building, same sign, same layout. Except, my reflection was visible in the cooler door. Even though the photo looked decades old, my stomach dropped. They weren't distributing soda. They were distributing something looking for hosts, and I had opened the crate. My phone buzzed, unknown number, a whisper. "You can't run, Ethan." They knew my name. The phone melted in my hand, plastic dripping like wax, forcing me to drop it. The crate started to hiss. The bottles bulged outward like something inside was clawing to escape. Suddenly, headlights appeared in my rearview mirror. The Pepsi truck. The figures stepped out silently and surrounded my car. Not rushed, not angry, patient. I locked the doors, trembling, clutching the crate, but the ash-eyed driver leaned against my window and spoke. "You opened the batch meant for disposal, not for shelves, not for consumption." He paused. "You freed them." The bottles inside the crate burst open. Black liquid poured out, slithering upward like smoke, forming thin tendrils that reached for my arms, my face, my mouth. I screamed. Then, silence. The next morning, police found my car abandoned on a dirt road. Engine running, driver's door open, no sign of me. Just a single Pepsi bottle sitting on the seat. The label was blank except for a blurry, faded photograph burned into the plastic. It showed me, standing in the gas station, restocking shelves, smiling. Under the photo, in handwriting that didn't belong to me, batch accepted. Story 3, I never thought a simple bottle of Pepsi could ruin my life. My name is Evan Mercer, a 27-year-old inventory worker at a distribution warehouse in Riverside, California. I had a normal, boring life, clock in at 7 a.m., count boxes, load trucks, clock out at 4 p.m., pick up a cold Pepsi from the break room fridge, and head home to my small apartment on Sycamore Avenue. Nothing strange ever happened around me, until the night I worked late. My supervisor, Joel, had asked me to stay an extra 3 hours to log a shipment that arrived from a Pepsi bottling plant in Lathrop, California. It was a huge batch, over 40 pallets, each filled with thousands of Pepsi bottles. Something about this shipment felt off. The labels were slightly darker, the caps a shade too glossy, and the manufacturing date was smudged like someone had wiped it on purpose. But I shrugged it off. Money is money, and overtime pay kept my bills from swallowing me whole. It was around 11:48 p.m. when I walked toward the break room, exhausted and thirsty. The workers had already left. I was completely alone in the warehouse, with only the buzzing fluorescent lights above me. I opened the fridge. Inside, there was only one Pepsi left. Not my usual can. A bottle. A bottle with the same dark label I noticed earlier. I didn't question it. I just grabbed it, twisted the cap, and took a long, deep drink. That was the first mistake. The taste wasn't normal. It wasn't the crisp, carbonated sweetness I loved. It was flat, metallic, and cold in a way that felt unnatural, like it hadn't been refrigerated, but frozen from the inside out. I checked the label again. No nutrition facts, no barcode, just one sentence printed where the ingredients should have been. "This is not yours." My throat tightened. I swallowed wrong and coughed, the liquid burning like acid. My hands shook as I flipped the bottle around. On the back, printed in faint, almost invisible ink, was a line of coordinates. 38 degrees, 11.06 minutes north, 121 degrees, 28.70 minutes west, a location in Stockton, California. Why was a Pepsi bottle giving me coordinates? That's when the warehouse lights flickered, then shut off. Everything went black. The air grew colder, so cold that my breath fogged in front of me. I heard a noise behind the shelves, slow, crunching, like footsteps moving over shattered glass. I tried to speak, but my throat burned too much. Another sound, this time a low, wet dragging. Then a whisper, "Give it back." I froze. The bottle slipped from my hand and rolled across the floor, the hollow plastic tap-tapping into the darkness. The whisper came again, inches from my left ear. "You shouldn't have drunk it." I ran. I sprinted toward the exit door, fumbling for the keycard clipped to my belt. My lungs burned. My throat felt like it was swelling shut. I didn't dare look behind me, even though the footsteps followed, closer and closer. When I slammed through the back door and into the cold night air, the warehouse lights came back on behind me. Everything looked normal again. Too normal. I got into my car, shaking, and sped home. Every few minutes, my hands drifted to my throat. It felt wrong, tight, cold, pulsing. At 1:14 a.m., my phone buzzed, unknown number, a voice message. When I played it, I dropped the phone onto my lap. Because the message wasn't someone speaking, it was me choking. The exact sound I had made in the warehouse. Someone had recorded it. Someone had my audio. My entire drive home, I kept checking the rearview mirror. I kept thinking I saw something sitting in the back seat. A shadow, a shape leaning forward. But every time I looked directly, nothing was there. When I finally reached my apartment, the Pepsi bottle was sitting on my doorstep. The same bottle I had dropped. The same bottle that had coordinates. It was standing upright, waiting for me. I didn't touch it. I kicked it away, locked my door, and paced my living room. My throat felt colder by the minute, and every sip of water tasted metallic, like the Pepsi had infected me. By 2 a.m., I couldn't breathe right. I tried calling 911, but my phone wouldn't dial. It kept playing the same recorded choking sounds from earlier, on loop. At 2:17 a.m., everything stopped. Dead silence. No traffic outside. No humming refrigerator. No neighbors through the thin walls. Just cold, still air. Then my phone buzzed again. This time a text message. "Go to the coordinates." I didn't respond. Another message. "Now." I threw my phone across the room. It landed face down, vibrating nonstop. Then came the knock at my door. Slow, heavy, not a person's knock. More like something using its whole body to strike the wood. Knock, knock, knock. I stood frozen in my hallway. The peephole darkened, like someone huge was standing directly against it. Then a deep, slow whisper seeped through the bottom of the door. "Return what you took." My throat burned so fiercely that I doubled over. Fine. If going to the coordinates would stop whatever was happening, maybe I'd go. Maybe I had no choice. I drove through the empty desert highway, my headlights barely piercing the darkness. The coordinates led to the outskirts of Stockton, to an abandoned Pepsi warehouse from the 1980s. It had been shut down decades ago after a chemical accident that killed several workers. Locals said the bodies were never found. Rumors said the plant wasn't shut down. It was sealed. The gates were rusted, half collapsed. My car couldn't go farther, so I walked. The air grew colder as I approached the building. When I reached the door, it slid open on its own. Inside, everything smelled like stale soda syrup and rot. Old Pepsi machines lined the walls. Conveyor belts covered in dust. smashed bottles on the floor like frozen footprints, and in the center of the room, a giant tank, marked only with a faded Pepsi logo. I approached it slowly. Inside the tank was dark liquid, but it wasn't soda. It moved, and something inside the liquid moved with it. Then I saw them. Bodies. Dozens of bodies floating in the tank, half dissolved, their skin peeling off, their faces frozen mid-scream. My stomach flipped. Their throats were black, burned from the inside, just like mine felt. Something surfaced from the tank. A hand, long, slimy, rotting. It pressed against the glass. Then a face rose behind it, a melted, featureless head with a mouth that stretched open far wider than normal. The tank began to shake, and the whisper returned, this time vibrating through the walls. "Give it back!" I stumbled backward, nearly slipping on glass. Behind me, the conveyor belts jerked to life, creaking and rumbling. Old plastic Pepsi bottles rolled down the belts, hundreds of them, each one filled with the same dark liquid, each one printed with new coordinates, each one printed with a name. Then I saw my own name on one of the labels. Evan Mercer, December 7th. This is not yours. My throat tightened violently. The creature slammed its body against the tank. The glass cracked. I ran. I sprinted past the containers, the broken machines, the bottles that rattled as if something inside them was alive. The front door slammed shut on its own before I could reach it. Then the room dimmed, turning Pepsi blue. Every light bulb glowed bright blue. Every bottle lit from inside as if electrified. The whispers grew louder. "We gave you what was ours. Return the drink. Your throat belongs to us now." I dropped to my knees, gasping for air. My throat felt like it was swelling shut. I clawed at it, desperate for air, desperate for anything. Something cold touched my shoulder. A hand. I screamed and crawled forward, forcing myself to my feet. I ran toward a back door I hadn't noticed earlier. It was half broken, hanging crooked. I shoved it open and burst outside. Cold night air, real air. I collapsed in the dirt, inhaling deeply until the burning faded. Behind me, the warehouse lights flickered violently, like lightning trapped in the building. A hum filled the air. Low, mechanical. Then a siren. Red and blue lights flashed across the empty field. A police SUV pulled up, and an officer stepped out. Officer Amanda Hayes, badge shining under the moonlight. "What are you doing out here?" she asked. I tried to speak, but my voice came out hoarse. "There's something inside," I managed. She narrowed her eyes. Then she opened her door. "Sit tight. I'll take a look." "No!" I tried to stop her, but she was already walking toward the warehouse. The door had somehow fixed itself, closed tight, glowing faintly blue. She pushed it. It opened easily. She stepped inside, and the door slammed behind her. Her scream lasted less than a second, just a choked gasp. Cut off abruptly. Blood seeped out from the bottom of the door. I scrambled backward, trembling uncontrollably. Then the warehouse lights turned off. All at once. Pitch black. Except for one thing. A Pepsi bottle rolled out of the darkness and stopped at my feet. This one had a new label. Returned. I didn't remember getting home. I don't remember driving. I woke up the next morning in my apartment with my throat raw and my tongue numb. My phone had dozens of missed calls from the police. Officer Hayes was missing. Her SUV was found abandoned in a field, and her body was never recovered. That night, while I sat on the couch shaking, someone knocked on my door again. 3 slow knocks. I didn't move, didn't breathe. Then something slid under the door. A bottle, a Pepsi bottle, with a new message printed on the label. "You took more than a drink." I fell to the floor, because inside the bottle, floating in the dark liquid, was a human throat, and I recognized the badge number printed on the cap. Hayes's badge number. My phone buzzed. Another unknown message. This time a single sentence. "You're next." I can feel it happening now. My throat is burning again. My voice is fading, and bottles keep appearing. In my kitchen, in my car, on my bed, outside my window. All of them labeled with my name. All of them waiting. I don't think I have long left. If you ever find a Pepsi bottle with a damaged label, missing barcode, or strange coordinates, don't drink it, no matter how thirsty you are. Because some drinks aren't meant for humans. Some drinks want something back, something from inside you. Story 4. My name is Evan Mercer, and before last winter, I never believed something as ordinary as a Pepsi bottle could ruin a man's life. It sounds ridiculous even as I write it, but I need someone to know what happened in Coldwater, Michigan, because the police stopped listening and everyone else thinks I've lost my mind. It began on a Thursday night in November, the kind of night when the wind claws at the windows and the whole town feels like it's holding its breath. I had just finished my shift at Ridgeway Auto Repairs, and on my way home, I stopped at the only place open that late. Harper's Gas and Go, an old convenience store off Route 29. Harper's was a dying place, buzzing lights, dusty shelves, and a cashier who always stared at the door like he wanted to run out of it. But it had one thing I needed after a long shift, an ice-cold Pepsi. I walked to the refrigerator, reached in, and grabbed a bottle from the back. As soon as I closed my hand around the plastic, I felt a tiny vibration, almost like something inside the bottle shifted. I frowned. Maybe the bottle was overcarbonated. I didn't think much of it. Not yet. At the counter, the cashier, an older man named Wyatt, looked at the Pepsi and stiffened. "You got this from the cooler?" he asked, voice tight. "Yeah," I said. "Why?" He swallowed hard. "That bottle, wasn't there an hour ago?" I laughed awkwardly. "You probably restocked and forgot." Wyatt didn't laugh. He just stared at me with the kind of fear you only see in someone who's hiding something. "Sir," he whispered, leaning in, "don't drink it tonight." A chill crawled down my back. "Why not?" Wyatt's eyes flicked toward the aisles as if someone was listening. "People around here have been finding things. Bottles, cans, delivered at night. No trucks, no drivers, just appearing." He forced the bottle into a small paper bag, his hand shaking. "Just wait till morning. Promise me." I thought he was crazy, but the way he whispered, the way he looked over his shoulder, something wasn't right. Still, I took the Pepsi and walked out. The cold air slapped my face, but something else made me freeze. The parking lot was empty except for my truck. No other cars, no footsteps, no signs of life. But I swear I heard breathing. Not human breathing. Wet, hollow, like air passing through an empty jug. I shoved the feeling away, jumped into my truck, and drove home. My house sat alone at the edge of Coldwater, facing Lake Turner. No neighbors, no noise. Normally peaceful, but that night, the silence felt heavy. I dropped my keys on the counter and pulled out the Pepsi. When I twisted the cap, it didn't make the usual fizzy pop. It hissed, slow, long, like a person exhaling. A sour, metallic smell drifted out. Not strong, but wrong. I almost put the bottle down, but I was exhausted, thirsty, and annoyed by my own paranoia. So I took a sip. The taste was normal at first, sweet, cold, refreshing. Then for half a second, something moved under the liquid. I nearly dropped the bottle. "What the hell?" I held it up to the light. Nothing. Just dark Pepsi bubbles floating upward. I blamed fatigue, placed the bottle in the fridge, and went to bed. But at 2:13 a.m., I woke up choking, not coughing, choking like someone had stuffed cloth into my throat. I staggered into the bathroom, gasping. My mouth tasted like battery acid and metal. I spat into the sink, black foam, thick, sticky, still bubbling. Pepsi foam, except it was moving on its own. The foam writhed in slow circles, like it had a pulse. I stumbled back, screaming. Then the foam slid toward the drain and disappeared. Gone. Just like that. By morning, I convinced myself it was a dream, until I found a second Pepsi bottle on my porch. Unopened. Beads of cold water dripping down the sides. But the temperature outside was below freezing. Nothing should have been cold. My blood ran cold. Wyatt had said the bottles appeared. I picked it up with shaking hands. Under the label, someone had carved tiny words directly into the plastic. Take another sip. I drove straight back to Harper's, gas and go. The bell above the door jingled, but Wyatt wasn't behind the counter. A younger woman was there instead. Alice, his niece. Where's Wyatt? I asked. She frowned. He didn't show up for work. He hasn't answered his phone since last night. My heart hammered. I need to see your security cameras. She blinked. Why? Please, I insisted. Something isn't right. Maybe it was the panic in my voice, but she finally nodded and took me to the back office. She rewound the footage to last night. The cooler aisle appeared empty. Then, 2:41 a.m., the Pepsi fridge door swung open on its own. No person, no shadow, just the door opening. A single Pepsi bottle lifted off the shelf, floated out, and gently placed itself on a crate. Alice screamed. I stared, frozen. The bottle on screen looked exactly like the one I'd bought. Then the door slammed shut so hard the camera shook. Alice begged me to call the police. But what would I say? A soda bottle is stalking me? No. Instead, I drove home and threw both bottles into the trash. But that night, something worse happened. I woke up to a faint fizzing sound, like bubbles popping. I followed the noise to the living room. Both Pepsi bottles were on my coffee table, standing upright, dripping. I hadn't brought them inside. I hadn't touched them. And they were now warm, warm like a living body. Then the fizzing grew louder, morphing into a whisper. Not English, not human. A wet, slurping chant. My stomach twisted. I felt a tug inside my throat, like someone was pulling a string from deep inside my chest. I vomited black foam again. This time, it formed shapes, thin worm-like strands crawling across the floor toward the bottles. I screamed, stomped them, wiped them, but they kept moving until they reached the bottles and disappeared inside through the cap. I ran out of the house and drove until sunrise. I ended up at Coldwater Police Department. Officer Daniels heard me out, but his expression changed from concern to disbelief. So, animated soda foam is breaking into your home? That's not what Just check Harper's security footage. He sighed. We already did. My heart thudded. When? This morning. Wyatt's niece reported him missing. And the footage? He rubbed his forehead. The camera showed nothing. No floating bottle. No opening door. Just empty aisles. I felt the world tilt. No, I whispered. I saw it. Alice saw it. Daniels didn't argue. He just placed a hand on my shoulder. Go home, Evan. Get some sleep. I left shaking, terrified that the footage had changed, or worse, been changed. That night, I refused to go home. Instead, I drove out to Lake Turner Woods and parked under a dead oak. The woods were silent, too silent. I sat in the cold, thinking about Wyatt, thinking about the bottles, the whispers, the foam. A crack snapped behind me. I spun around. Something moved in the darkness. A man. No, no longer fully a man. His skin was pale, stretched thin. His lips were cracked. His eyes were ringed with dried black foam. It was Wyatt. He spoke in a broken voice. It wants you. Next. I backed away. What wants me? I cried. He lifted his shaking hand. Behind him, dozens of Pepsi bottles lay scattered on the forest floor. Some upright, some half-buried, all vibrating. The caps twisted on their own, hissing, whispering, calling. Then Wyatt convulsed, fell to his knees, and black foam exploded out of his mouth, rushing toward me like a tide. I ran. I didn't look back. I kept running until my lungs burned and I reached my truck. I don't live in my house anymore. I don't sleep. I barely eat. Every morning, I find a Pepsi bottle somewhere near me, on the motel nightstand, on my truck's hood, outside bathroom doors. They are appearing faster now. I hear the whispers even when the bottles are gone. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I feel something crawling in my throat again. Something waiting, something hungry. I know how this ends. I know what the bottles want. They want me to finish what I started. They want the last sip. If anyone finds this letter, don't look for me. Don't go near cold water. Don't touch any bottle you didn't buy yourself. And whatever you do, never drink what calls your name. Story 5, I never thought a single bottle of Pepsi could ruin my entire life. But when I look back, everything started on that cold October night in Redwood Falls, Minnesota, a town so quiet that even rumors move slower than the wind. I worked as a night shift stocker at Turner's Gas and Grocery, a small convenience store off Highway 13. My manager, Derek Lamont, trusted me with the graveyard shift because, as he always said, "Miles, you're the only one who won't fall asleep on the job." He didn't know that I couldn't sleep even if I tried. Insomnia had been eating my nights for months. It was around 1:12 a.m. when I noticed the Pepsi delivery crate sitting near the back door. We hadn't received any shipment that day. I checked the logs. Nothing. No scheduled delivery. No note. Just a black-colored Pepsi crate that looked older than the store itself. Dusty, dented, and with an outdated Pepsi logo from maybe the 1980s. Something inside me said, "Don't open it." But of course, I opened it. Inside were 6 glass Pepsi bottles, but the liquid wasn't the usual dark brown. It was almost pitch black, thicker, like oil. And the labels, they weren't branded, just a small handwritten tag on each bottle. Limited batch for sampling only, 1111. I should have thrown them out, but curiosity doesn't let people like me walk away. I grabbed one bottle and twisted it open. The fizz didn't sound normal. It hissed, more like something exhaling after being trapped for too long. The smell was sweet, then bitter, then metallic. Something told me to stop, but I took a sip anyway. For the first few seconds, nothing happened. Then the store lights flickered. The cold drink burned down my throat like fire. My ears began ringing, soft at first, then louder, like someone screaming underwater. And then I heard it, a whisper, inside my head, clear as day. "Find me." My heart slammed against my ribs as the store suddenly went silent. Even the refrigerator hum died. I stumbled back, dropping the bottle. But instead of shattering, it landed upright, like someone placed it gently on the ground. I froze. Something was terribly wrong. A black shimmer floated inside the bottle, moving, alive. I ran to the front counter to call Derek, but the phone kept giving a dead tone. My cell had no signal. All I heard was that same whisper again, now closer, clearer. "Find me before he does." Who was he? And why did it sound like the voice was coming from inside the store? I forced myself to check the security camera monitor. All screens were static, except one, the aisle where I had opened the Pepsi crate. Someone was standing there, a tall man in an outdated delivery uniform, the kind Pepsi drivers used to wear decades ago. Skin pale, eyes pitch black like the drink itself. He wasn't moving, just staring at the camera. Then the man smiled, and the monitor went black. I felt my knees weaken. I wanted to run outside, but something deep in my chest squeezed, like invisible hands pressing my lungs. I wasn't alone anymore. I grabbed the store keys and ran toward the exit. When I swung the door open, the night outside was completely wrong. Too dark. Not normal dark, like someone painted over the world. And in that darkness, someone was walking slowly toward the store. Not the delivery guy, someone smaller. I shut the door instantly and backed away, my breathing fast. The whisper came again, louder. "Do not let him in." My head spun. I turned around and screamed. The man from the camera was now inside the store, right behind the Pepsi aisle, still smiling. He lifted one of the black Pepsi bottles and pointed it at me like a weapon. The bottle cap twisted on its own, flying off. A stream of black fizzy liquid slithered out, crawling across the floor like a living shadow. It moved straight toward me. I jumped behind the counter, grabbed a mop bucket, and threw it in the path of the creeping black fizz. The liquid hissed as it touched the metal and changed direction instantly, like it recognized I was trying to block it. The man took a step forward, his voice deep and broken like a damaged speaker. "Return what you took." "I didn't take anything," I yelled. He pointed at my chest. I looked down. My shirt was wet, stained with a small splash from the sip I took. The stain wasn't spreading, it was pulsing, like a heartbeat. My heartbeat. The whisper inside me grew desperate. "He wants the rest of you. Get out." My survival instinct kicked in. I sprinted toward the stockroom door, slammed it shut, and pushed a heavy crate in front of it. But the whisper didn't stop. "You shouldn't have drunk it. Now you carry him." "What do you mean carry him? What is happening?" I shouted into the empty stockroom. But the voice didn't answer this time. My chest began burning, like the black Pepsi was boiling under my skin. I grabbed my phone again, still no signal. The windows in the back were pitch black, as if the darkness outside had thickened. I needed to escape. I threw a metal rod through the window, breaking the glass. And that's when I froze. There was no outside, literally no outside. It wasn't darkness, it was emptiness, a void. Like the store had been swallowed by something beyond reality. And then, footsteps, slow, heavy, getting closer to the stockroom. He was coming. I looked around frantically and my eyes landed on something I hadn't noticed before. A second Pepsi crate. But this one looked newer, cleaner, untouched. Inside it, a note. "Only one can leave. Drink to return." I felt the man beating on the stockroom door now, each hit shaking the wall. I grabbed one of the bottles from the clean crate. The liquid inside this one looked normal, brown, familiar. But the whisper inside me screamed, "Do not drink that. It isn't yours." The pounding on the door grew louder. The wood cracked. I had no time. I unscrewed the cap of the normal-looking bottle. The scent was sweet and cold, just like regular Pepsi. But before I could drink, the door split open. The man stepped in. His face was now peeling, empty like a hollow suit. His voice echoed, "Drink and become me?" I realized the truth then. These weren't drinks. They were vessels. Each bottle carried a piece of something alive, something ancient. And by drinking the black Pepsi earlier, I had taken his place. Unless I passed it on. Unless I drank another bottle, becoming the next delivery man. My hands shook. I dropped the bottle. "No," I whispered. "I'm not becoming you." The man lunged at me. I grabbed the broken metal rod from the window, swung it with everything I had, and shattered the black Pepsi bottle the man was holding. The moment it broke, the fizz inside exploded into a violent cloud of screaming shadows. They wrapped around him, dragging him backward into the collapsing darkness outside the window. His hands clawed the air, but within seconds he was swallowed completely, erased. Then the shadows turned toward me. I backed away, terrified, but instead of attacking, they hovered around me, whispering softly, almost sadly. "You freed us." The stain on my chest faded. The burning stopped. The whisper in my head went silent. And just like that, daylight burst through the broken window. The world outside snapped back into place. Cars passed. Birds chirped. Everything normal. The store was a mess, bottles shattered, shelves knocked over. Derek arrived minutes later, shocked by the scene. But the black crate, gone, like it never existed. Only one bottle remained on the floor, empty. I picked it up, and on the inside of the label, scratched faintly, were the words, 1111, you chose right. I left Redwood Falls that night and never returned. But sometimes when the clock hits 1111, I still hear that faint fizzing whisper, "Find me." And every time I pray no one opens a wrong Pepsi crate the way I did. Story 6, I never thought a simple Pepsi could ruin my life. My name is Evan Miller, a 28-year-old warehouse worker from Redwood Springs, Colorado, a quiet town near the foothills where trouble usually meant nothing more than a bar fight or a lost tourist. I worked night shifts at Brightmart Distribution Center, a huge warehouse that shipped sodas and snacks all across the Midwest. Before everything happened, my nights were simple. Load trucks, scan packages, drink Pepsi to stay awake, repeat. I never believed in curses, spirits, or anything supernatural. I'm the last person who would connect a Pepsi can to a horror story. But there are things in this world that hide in the most ordinary places, waiting. And one night I found one. It started at 2:14 a.m. on November 3rd, during a freezing Colorado night when the warehouse lights kept flickering like they were struggling to stay alive. I was assigned to the soda aisle, aisle 17, the coldest part of the warehouse. That night, something felt off from the moment I walked in. The temperature dropped like someone had opened a freezer. The air smelled stale, rotten almost. Then I found it, a single Pepsi can, placed upright in the middle of the floor, its surface covered in scratches, almost like fingernail marks. No barcode, no batch code, no expiration date, just a perfectly blue can that felt wrong. And the moment I touched it, everything changed. When my fingers wrapped around the can, a sharp jolt shot through my palm, like an electric shock, but colder. The metal felt icy, as if it had been pulled from deep underground. I shook my hand, confused. That's when the warehouse lights shut off. All of them, pitch black. I froze. From the far end of aisle 17, I heard something drag, slow, heavy, wet, like flesh sliding across the concrete floor. I tried turning on my flashlight, but it flickered uselessly. Then a voice whispered behind me, "Don't drink it." I spun around, heart pounding, but no one was there. Just empty racks stretching into darkness. When the lights finally flickered back on, the Pepsi can was still in my hand. But it was warm now, almost pulsing. I dropped it immediately and backed away. And I swear, as it rolled, the scratches on the can shifted. They weren't random. They formed words. "Open me." I tried telling my supervisor, Mark Hollings, but he laughed it off. "Dude, it's just a promotional can or some misprint. Relax." But it wasn't a misprint. I knew it. Still, I didn't argue. I grabbed the can again to put it in the defective items bin. The moment I touched it, a sharp metallic whisper crawled into my ear. "You already chose me." I dropped it again, but something inside me shifted, like a hook had been planted in my mind. I began hearing faint carbonation crackles, even though the can was sealed. I felt thirsty, unbelievably thirsty. No water could help, not even other sodas. It was like the Pepsi can was calling me, tugging my brain toward it. That night I took it home. I don't know why. I shouldn't have. But once you touch that can, it doesn't let go. The drive home felt wrong. Every streetlight flickered as I passed. The radio cut in and out with bursts of static, sometimes forming words. Drink, free me, drink. By the time I reached my apartment at Cedar Heights, my hands were shaking. I put the can on the kitchen counter and stared at it. The scratches now looked like tiny symbols, circles intersecting with lines, almost ritualistic. Something deep inside whispered that opening it would be the biggest mistake of my life. I wish I had listened. At 3:41 a.m., after hours of fighting the urge, I broke. My throat burned with thirst. My head throbbed like something was beating against my skull from inside. I felt dizzy, desperate. My fingers moved on their own. Click. The moment I opened the can, the lights in my apartment blew out. A thick, black fog shot upward from inside the can. Not vapor, not gas. Something alive. It twisted in the air like a shadow made of liquid. I stumbled back, terrified as a silhouette formed inside the fog, tall, bony, and impossibly thin. Two hollow white eyes appeared, staring right at me. Then a voice, guttural, layered, inhuman, rumbled, "I am unsealed." The fog shot forward like a hand, wrapping around my throat. I couldn't breathe. I clawed at my neck, choking, but the shadow tightened its grip. My vision pixelated, flashing blue like the Pepsi logo. Then everything went black. I woke up on the kitchen floor at sunrise. The Pepsi can lay empty, crushed inward, as if something had forced its way out. Every window in my apartment was cracked from the inside. My throat felt bruised, as if someone had strangled me for hours. But the worst part? Someone had carved words into my refrigerator door. Deep, sharp, fresh. "Thank you." I ran out of the apartment and drove straight to work, thinking I'd lost my mind. But when I reached the warehouse, things were worse. Aisle 17 was sealed off. Police everywhere. Crime scene tape. Paramedics rolling out a body bag. It was Mark, my supervisor. His face twisted in terror, eyes bulging, throat crushed. According to officers, he was found gripping a crushed Pepsi can, the same can I had taken home, except I still had mine. So how did he have one? That's when I noticed something horrifying. The police were carrying out 3 more identical blue cans, scratched, unmarked, batchless cans, found scattered around his body. It had multiplied. From that night onward, the cans began appearing everywhere I went. In my car, on my kitchen table, inside my locker at work, once even inside my shower, perfectly upright on the edge. Every can had moving scratches, like they were alive. Everyone whispered the same message. You opened the first, now open the rest. My sleep became torture. Every night I heard carbonated breathing outside my bedroom door. Sometimes I woke up to the sound of a can opening by itself, followed by the familiar hiss of fog crawling under the door. I moved out of my apartment. It didn't help. I quit my job. The cans followed. One night I drove to an empty field outside town and buried them all. 23 cans I had found over the weeks. I dug for hours, covered the hole, and ran back to my truck. The next morning I found a single Pepsi can sitting in my passenger seat, covered in fresh dirt. Scratches spelling, "You can't bury thirst." By December I was barely alive. No sleep, no appetite, paranoid, breaking down mentally. Then the worst night came. I returned home to find my entire living room filled with Pepsi cans. Hundreds, stacked to the ceiling, a wall of blue metal. Before I could run, every can opened at once. The room filled with a thick, black fog, swirling around me like a storm. I screamed as the shadows formed a towering figure, this time fully shaped, its limbs too long, joints bending wrong, head tilted like a broken mannequin. It walked toward me with cracking sounds, bones grinding. I felt the air turn ice cold. It leaned close, its hollow eyes inches from mine, and whispered, "Your thirst fed me. Now you join me." A cold hand pierced into my chest, not cutting, not stabbing, absorbing. I felt my heart beat slow. My vision turned blue, my skin numbed. The last thing I saw before fainting was the creature dragging me into the fog. I woke up in a hospital 3 days later. The doctor said I was found lying unconscious in the middle of Harrison Road, miles from my home. No one knows how I got there. They think I had a psychological break. They think I hallucinated everything. But they didn't see what I saw. When the nurse brought me water, I asked her to open the curtains. Outside my hospital window, on the roof of the building across the street, something was standing there. Tall, thin, motionless, holding a Pepsi can, staring at me. I blinked. It didn't disappear. It lifted the can slowly, and with a single finger, tapped the top of the can, like reminding me it's still here, still watching, still waiting to be opened again. I closed the curtain. My hands trembled. My heart screamed. But I know the truth now. Once you open the first cursed Pepsi, you never stop. It never stops. And somewhere out there, in the dark corners of warehouses, gas stations, and trucks across America, more cans are waiting. Story 7, I never believed a soda could ruin my life. I'm 24, born and raised in Wilmington, North Carolina, and until last year, my biggest problem was figuring out how to pay off my student loans. I worked late nights at a small gas station off Highway 17, a lonely stretch of asphalt running past marshlands and pine forests. Every night around 11 p.m., the store would get quiet, just the buzzing lights and the hum of the refrigerators behind me. The Pepsi fridge was always the loudest, a deep, low rumble, like someone breathing inside it. I ignored it. You hear weird stuff working night shifts, but on October 12th, everything changed. I was stocking chips when I heard the Pepsi fridge door click open on its own. No customers, no wind, nothing. When I turned, a single bottle had fallen out, lying on its side in the middle of the aisle. The label was wrong. Instead of the usual red, white, and blue swirl, it showed a dark silhouette of a human figure, standing alone in the center of the logo. I remember whispering, "What the hell?" The bottle hissed suddenly, the cap twisting by itself as white vapor leaked out like breath in cold air. I should have left it alone. Instead, I reached for it, and that was my first mistake. The bottle felt warm. Pepsi is never warm. As soon as my fingers closed around it, the entire store flickered. Lights dimming, screens glitching, the air turning heavy like a storm was passing overhead. On instinct, I twisted open the cap. A sound escaped the bottle. Not a fizz, not a pop, but a whisper. A shaky human whisper. I'm still here. The bottle vibrated violently and I dropped it. Pepsi splashed everywhere as the dark liquid spread across the tile floor in slow, unnatural ripples. It moved like it was alive. It seeped toward my shoes, crawling in a smooth line, like it had purpose. That's when something else happened. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. The message, don't drink it. Don't look at the logo. He sees you now. I felt ice go through my spine. I stared down at the spilled Pepsi, and the reflection in it wasn't mine. It was a tall, thin man with no facial features, just a smooth, dark face, and a chest shaped like a twisted Pepsi logo, swirling like liquid. I fell backward, knocking into a shelf. The reflection didn't move like I did. It moved toward me. I scrambled to my feet, heart hammering. The reflection in the Pepsi puddle stretched, elongated, and rose upward like a shadow peeling itself off the ground. He formed slowly, limbs dripping, torso twisting, face blank. The humming fridge behind me shook violently, bottles rattling inside. Then everything went still. The shadow man leaned unnaturally sideways in the puddle, as if bending his head to inspect me. Then the whisper came again. Drink with me. I ran. I sprinted into the back storage room and slammed the door shut. My hands were trembling, sweat soaking my uniform. Through the metal door, I heard slow, sticky footsteps, like bare feet stepping in syrup, each step closer, each step heavier. I looked around desperately. The security monitor showed the front of the store. He was standing in front of the Pepsi fridge, staring at the camera. But he had no eyes. Still, I could feel him watching me. Then he lifted one long arm and pointed directly at the camera. At me. The screen went black. I called 911. The line picked up, but no one spoke. Just static. Then a voice, distorted, layered, like multiple people speaking in slow motion. He belongs to us. My phone died instantly. I didn't know what to do. I grabbed my backpack, pushed through the emergency exit, and sprinted across the parking lot toward my car. But when I reached my car, a man stepped out from behind it. A real man, not a shadow. He wore a faded Pepsi merch jacket, old from the 90s. He looked exhausted, eyes bloodshot, hair unwashed. I warned you, he said. My heart nearly exploded from panic. You sent the message? I asked. He nodded. You touched the bottle, didn't you? I swallowed. What the hell is happening? He stared at the gas station doors like he expected the shadow to walk out at any moment. It's called Batch 47X. Factory shut down years ago after workers started disappearing. Bodies never found. Rumor says one employee, a guy named Elias Crowden, slipped into one of the mixing vats and dissolved. My stomach turned. They never found him, the man whispered, but he found a way to be bottled. The door of the gas station exploded outward, glass flying everywhere. The shadow was stepping out, tall as the doorway, body bending unnaturally as if made of liquid. Get in the car, the stranger yelled. We jumped in. I slammed the locks and peeled out of the parking lot. My headlights caught the shadow man standing perfectly still in the middle of the road, facing us. As we drove off, he didn't chase. He just melted into the asphalt like dark water. Where are we going? I shouted. A place he can't enter. We sped down the highway, forest on both sides, moonlight slicing through the trees. I kept checking the mirrors. Every now and then, I'd see a dark, humanoid shape flicker between the trees, keeping pace with the car. Not running, not walking, just appearing. The stranger said, Don't look him in the logo again. What logo? He handed me the bottle from earlier. I didn't even realize he had picked it up. The man-shaped silhouette in the Pepsi logo was now closer, bigger. Its hand pressed against the inside of the bottle, palm stretched. Something tapped against the plastic from inside. Tap, tap, tap. I nearly threw it out the window. We drove into the woods until we reached a small abandoned ranger cabin. The stranger motioned me inside. He can't cross places with no carbonation, he explained. No soda, no fizz, nothing bottled. I didn't know if he was insane or right. Inside, he blocked the door with furniture. But then from outside, a gurgling sound, like boiling liquid. The wood walls darkened as thin streams of cola seeped through cracks, moving upward, searching, pooling along the floor. "He's already here," I whispered. The stranger backed away, terrified. The Pepsi puddles stretched across the floor, forming a long shape. 2 legs, 2 arms, a torso. The carbonated man rose up again, forming from the liquid. He turned his blank face toward us. The stranger screamed and threw the bottle at him. "Wrong move." The bottle hit the floor and exploded. Black foam everywhere. The creature inhaled sharply, as if feeding on the fizz, growing taller, stronger. He reached for the stranger. I didn't stay to see what happened next. I sprinted into the woods. Branches whipped my face. Roots tripped my feet, but I didn't stop. I could hear the creature moving behind me. No footsteps, no breathing, just the faint fizzing sound, like someone shaking a soda bottle endlessly. I reached a clearing with an old fire tower. I climbed the ladder, lungs burning. At the top, I collapsed, shaking, staring down at the moonlit forest. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the bottle, the same damn bottle, rolled out from the shadows behind me. I don't know how it got there. The logo's figure was now pressed fully against the inside, like he was staring directly at me. A whisper came from it, soft but clear. "You already drank." Confusion hit me until I tasted it, a sweetness on my tongue. The creature hadn't needed me to drink from the bottle. He had used the gas station's air, the vapor, the droplets, that tiny mist when I opened the cap earlier. I was contaminated. My hands trembled, veins darkened. My reflection on my phone screen warped, face blurring, eyes dissolving. The whisper grew louder. "Join me." My skin felt carbonated, bubbling, fizzing under the surface. My chest tightened, my throat burned. I tried to scream, but only foam came out, dripping down my chin. The trees below shifted. He was there. The carbonated man raised his arms slowly, as if welcoming me. The wind died, the forest fell silent, and I felt my bones soften, my body melting, pulling downward, turning into the same dark liquid that made him. I lost feeling in my legs first, then my arms, then my face. The last thing I saw was my reflection turning black and swirling, just like the logo. I was no longer human. I was part of Batch 47X. When hikers found the abandoned fire tower days later, they only noticed one thing: a single Pepsi bottle in the center of the platform, warm, unopened. The label showed 2 human figures inside the logo now. One of them was reaching outward, and if you listen close, you might hear a faint whisper leaking from the cap. "I'm still here."